All right, as I stated, we have special guest Wally Stine with Modern Concepts on the show today. Wally, thanks for joining us, man.
Dylan Miller, thanks for having me.
And the reason we were excited to have Wally on is because he is super detail oriented when it comes to dealing with the whole insurance claim process, selling jobs. And honestly, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say, because I think I stand a lot to learn from what you've learned over the years. So before we jump into all that, just tell our listeners kind of who you are, what your company is, and what your role in the company is.
I'm the managing director for Modern Concepts. We've been in business since 1993. Used to have offices pretty much around the country, used to storm. We're pretty much localized and stay in our home market now in Kansas City.
Gotcha. And I know one of the things we talked about offline was you'd mentioned to Miller that you've done 100,000 roofs.
Yes, that's in our home market. That's in Kansas City.
Wow. So it's way more than that nationwide then.
Nationwide it would be. Yep.
Wow. Yep. That's really something, man. In 27 short years, that's a lot per year.
Well, the industry's changed a lot now. Back in the day, you could do a whole lot more roofs than you could per year than you can nowadays, just due to the sheer amount of the roofers and labor shortages and things like that. So back in the 90s and early 2000s, you could definitely do a substantial amount of roofs per year.
Huh. So it's really changed a lot. Just you can't do them as quick as you used to, huh?
You can. I don't know that you can maintain the quality and the labor that you could in the past, due to just how many different roofing companies are out there.
That's kind of what we run into in Dallas too. It's like, my dad started in 92 and it was just wasn't that crowded. And now it's, oh my goodness. I've heard numbers in the tens of thousands of roofers that we have in Dallas. It's just,
yeah, you Texas boys run a different game down there. I don't know how y'all deal with it, quite honestly.
Oh man, yeah, it can be frustrating for sure.
I understand.
So are all of your roofs, is it primarily just hail work, or is some of this real estate deals or people paying out of pocket? Or
we don't do any new construction unless it's a previous client and they're building a new home. Most of our roofs are storm restoration type work. We do a substantial amount of retail work, and that is something we have focused on since 2012, to get more into the retail side, not just in our roofing side, but our entire GC side. So as of to date, our revenue base is probably about 50% insurance and about 50% retail.
Okay. Yeah. So you don't have to have a hailstorm every year then to make a living.
No, sir. No, sir.
Well, that's good. Yeah, it does help for sure. Yeah. So in talking to you recently, one of the things that you brought up that I want to talk about, and I think there's a lot of buzz about right now, is the lump sum contracts. And can you just kind of give us an overview of what that is and what your experience has been with it?
Well, we have found that the insurance carriers train their adjusters on Xactimate and train how to deny certain Xactimate line items and break the protocol of Xactimate. Well, Xactimate is a tool. If it's used incorrectly, it's going to produce an incorrect number. So we decided a couple of years back to just go to lump sum contracts. And this is our specification. We break down what we're doing, and we provide 3 different breakdowns for the carrier. And that would be equipment and supervision, material, and labor. And those are the only prices that we provide with numbers, and has a lump sum contract. And then we have payment terms, which for a insurance claim, which will detail the actual cash value, which would be the initial payment, the RCV value, which is the second payment, and then the third would be the supplement value. So our contract is clear cut. And a lot of people are talking about lump sum contracts, but then within the contract, they say we will accept what the insurance company offers. Well, the contract is clear then. It is based on what we call the known, the RCV. My number is not negotiable. This is what it takes to do the job correctly. And our out for the carrier is appraisal. So we will accept our lump sum amount, or the award issued by an appraisal panel per the policy provision, either one.
And so there's no violation of any laws by you saying, hey, it's this or appraisal, take it or leave it?
No.
Okay.
No, we're putting a dollar amount on the contract. If the carrier disputes that, the carrier has the right to invoke appraisal.
Oh, okay. So they're the ones that are invoking it then, not the homeowner a lot of times then?
No, it's generally the homeowner, but the carrier does have the right to invoke appraisal. And quite honestly, in the past, the carrier was the one that would invoke appraisal the majority of the time. Now, they don't want to go to appraisal because they know their scopes are incorrect. So I think I've only been involved in 2 claims where the carrier actually invoked appraisal.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking back after our conversation the other day about some of the things we talked about way back in Florida. You told me all kinds of stories about everything. And one of the things I had mentioned to you was appraisal, and my dad had success with that in Dallas, going back to the early 90s as well. And you said, if you go to appraisal in Missouri, you lose. Am I remembering that right?
I don't know that, because back in 2004 and 5, we didn't use appraisal very much in Missouri. We were not having the issues that we are currently having with the carriers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall that conversation.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I thought you had said something like that, but I guess not.
I think you're confusing it, because what am I saying is if you litigate with a carrier, you're going to lose. It doesn't matter if you win or lose, you will end up losing by the time it's all said and done. So I'm not a litigious person when it comes to litigating with carriers, although we do it every day. And we were successfully in setting a very good precedent in the state of Missouri about 3 weeks ago against auto owners and AAA. But I don't believe in litigation. I do believe in appraisal, and that's what appraisal is for, is to resolve a dispute to the value of a loss. It is supposed to be an informal, quick, and inexpensive format to resolve that. So if the carrier plays by the rules, appraisal should be appropriate to resolve the value of a loss.
Mm-hmm. So you had mentioned like the problem that you're having these days with carriers being overhead and profit, or OSHA, or
well, all of the above. I mean, in our contracts, we don't address overhead and profit anymore. It's built into our margin. That's one of the things with a lump sum contract. It takes away the whole argument. Well, this claim isn't viable for overhead and profit, although Xactimate protocol clearly states that overhead and profit should be applied to the claim at the end of the claim. So it just eliminates that. It eliminates line item disputes, whether the starter and the hip and ridge are in the waste, which we all know it's not. We all know it's a separate product. It has a separate cost. It has a separate yield rate. So when you go move to a lump sum contract, you eliminate those arguments. I can tell you the rebuttal to all of these arguments with the carrier, but it just gets tiring having to argue the same argument with the same adjuster over and over and over. And honestly, it's just a waste of time. It's a waste of time for the contractor. It's a waste of time for the adjuster. And it just gets confusing for the policyholder, which is a sad thing, because we have a mutual client that we're both there trying to help. And so we have just decided not to play the game with them anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of the point I've gotten to too, is it's just, and they train new people. So now you have younger people that don't know anything. You got a 20-year-old you're arguing with, and you've been doing it forever, and they don't even understand what you're talking about. And it's like, I don't have time to train them and fight with them.
And the problem with this, and what a lot of people don't know, and most states have adopted the Spearman doctrine. And if the homeowner produces the specifications or the plans for a project, i.e. an insurance scope, they are liable for the specifications as long as the contractor follows those specifications and the end product fails, i.e. they don't put starter, or they actually use waste for starter and hip and ridge, or they don't put the step walls in or what have you because it was specified that way, the homeowner is actually liable. That's Missouri law. And most states that I know of follow the Sparrow Doctrine, which was an award by the U.S. Supreme Court, I think, in 1918. So when you explain that to the homeowner that we need to get the specifications correct, how to do the project correctly, then the value of the project comes second. It's very important that they understand that. It's very important that the contractors understand that too. So that's the first thing that I point out to them, that if I do the work per the specification, tear it off and put it back on, 2 line items, then the product's going to fail. We all know that. And ultimately, the homeowner is responsible because they are the ones that supply the specification. So that is our first step in getting the specifications of how to perform the repairs correctly. And I think in our industry, like you were talking about, we have 20-year-old kids that don't know anything about the construction process. And if we get into a dispute for specifications, who are they? What authority, what training do they have to specify a project? Our first step is, if you want to argue how the project should be done, we need to retain an architect to specify it, and we'll revise our bid to those specifications. And that kind of shuts that down with the carrier pretty quick.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, let me paint a picture here. If this is the right picture, are you telling us that you basically, let's say you've got a homeowner that says, I want to go ahead and file a claim. You go out, you inspect the roof, you do you put your estimate together, and then you give that. And then if the insurance company says, no, we're not going to do that, that's too high, you just immediately say, okay, we're going to appraisal.
That is our next step. I ask them point blank, or we ask, do we have a dispute to the value of loss? And then we go to appraisal.
So how often do you have to take it to appraisal? I mean, I assume if you do this a few times, after a while, they probably start to realize, hey, let's not get in a debate with this guy.
We go to appraisal a lot less now than we did 5-6 years ago. I assure you of that. And a lot of times when we evoke appraisal, that gets their attention and they'll come to the table and get reasonable. The problem that we have with most of the carriers now is the insurance adjuster that you're dealing with, the desk adjuster or whoever's assigned to the claim, absolutely doesn't have the authority to allow the line items that we're asking for. They don't have the authority to add starter, or they don't have the authority to put the appropriate overhead and profit on there. So you can argue this all you want. They're not going to break their job description or the authority they have. So ultimately, you've got to get it to a supervisor, and the only way to get it to a supervisor is a demand for appraisal.
Interesting. Yeah, we have one that we're going through right now that started out at about 24 grand, and it looks like we may land somewhere just south of 50 grand after it's all said and done, because we sent our initial supplement in. Insurance company said, nope, we've looked at that. We've looked at hundreds of roofs. We don't agree with any of these items, UL listed caps and all this other stuff. No. And Miller said, okay, we're going to take it to appraisal. And a few weeks later, I mean, it's just a crazy thing. So, but what's your advice for guys that think, wow, that sounds like something I never do. It sounds like it's going to slow me down a lot. It sounds like, is it even going to be worth it? Yeah, I'm going to be doing more for the homeowner, but is it going to be worth it for me and my time and my business?
Well, the big thing is if you're willing to roof the house for $24,000, just give them a $24,000 bid and move forward. If you're going to do the work right and you want to be compensated for what you do, then and you're going to do insurance work, then there's steps you're going to have to take. And unfortunately, that includes appraisal. Unfortunately, that sometimes includes litigating the issue. We will always take the next best option in there. We kind of turned the insurance carrier's claims procedures and turned them back on them. Here's my estimate. You provide me documentation that my estimate is wrong, and I will correct my estimate. But other than that, that is our price. So we don't play the game where we send in code documents and all this stuff. Or, in all honesty, why is an adjuster writing a claim and doesn't know what is required by the municipality? Why should I, as a contractor, have to educate that person? That is not part of my job description. So the first thing we teach our clients in our reply to, hey, we need this code, is, can we get an adjuster that knows what they're doing? Well, I mean, if you don't know how to write the scope correctly and write it to the bare minimum of construction standard, then you're probably not the guy for the job. And so we put a lot of the stops to the nonsense that goes on with inside of a normal claim. You can deal with the same adjuster, the same carrier, and they are going to ask you for the same code document from the same municipality 100 times in one storm. That's ridiculous. They should get it one time, and then it should be over with. It should be actually written within their scope. The adjuster's job is to determine damage and then extend coverage. And if there's coverage under ordinance and law and they're not extending it, they're not being correct to the homeowner. They're being disingenuous in the way that they're writing their claims. So we have just decided not to waste our time anymore and stop playing the game. In 16, I tracked my time on one American Family claim, just back and forth, and I spent 52 hours in the supplement process on one claim and moved it. And I'm pretty good dealing with a carrier, and I moved it about $200. We went to appraisal, and I think it moved over $22,000 in our appraisal within a week. So what is your time worth? Why are we continually wasting time dealing with someone that has no authority to write the estimate correctly, or even worse, doesn't have the knowledge to write the estimate correctly?
Yeah, that's so true. That's what it's come down to with me. It's like, how much time am I going to, how many phone calls am I going to make and emails, and then follow up because they don't call you back. They don't email you back. And it's just like, okay, well, I'm just going to go around then.
I loved it back in the day when they would bring up complexity. Well, that claim's not complex enough. We're not including overhead and profit. And the truth of the matter is, the claim probably is not complex to me, but boy, it sure got complex when you got involved. It's one of those things where they're not taking into account how more difficult they make the construction process than just a normal spec or negotiated contract. And there's only so much time in a day. So if you're sitting there just arguing with carriers, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing in all actuality.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's so true, man. Yeah, just a waste of time, a waste of effort. And it's like, what you'd have to hire another person and pay them full time to just chase insurance adjusters around to get them to talk to you on the phone about a claim.
Right. And most companies of any volume do have a supplement or an estimation department or supplement department, and which is absolutely insanity, if you ask me, that you have to have those people on staff just to prove that ice and water shield is required in a municipality that has required it for 12 years. There's just something wrong with that scenario. And for us, we just are not going to continue to go that process. And it works for us because like I said, we will always take the next best option to protect our homeowner, to indemnify our homeowner, and make sure that we're compensated for the work that we've performed on the project.
Well, that leads me to another question, because you said a phrase that's a hot topic, which is overhead and profit. Miller's going to ask a couple of more technical questions about roofing. But before we get to that, what is your take on overhead and profit? I mean, we just had a call yesterday, and the carrier said, well, everything seems to look pretty good. We added a lot of stuff to the supplement. The call was going good, and Miller looked at me and he said, wait till we get to overhead and profit. And he said, the only last thing we have an issue with is that we just don't think we're going to be able to give you overhead and profit on the roof. So what do you guys do with overhead and profit? How often do you secure overhead and profit? What's your strategy with that? I mean, just let us mine some contractor gold here in this conversation on overhead and profit.
I would say when we were using Xactimate and still in the overhead and profit argument, I would say we were successful at getting overhead profit over 90% of the time. The whole argument, which you just put a smile on my face, saying, yeah, we feel a general contractor is warranted on everything else except the roof. How does anybody come up with that conclusion? The roof is probably the most difficult, most dangerous, most important part of the project, but they feel that supervision and a general contractor overseeing that is not warranted. That's absurd. And then if we're going to randomly pick which trade shouldn't have overhead and profit on it, I'm going to pick the screens. Let's pick the least amount. Why is it always the most expensive and most complicated trade? So it just doesn't fly. And then when you think about how the overhead and profit works, Xactimate is based on a material. It's a bottom up platform and a top bottom. They've morphed two ways to create an estimate, and both of those ways are not 100%. Those are for budgetary purposes, so they're not exact numbers. And there's a great video that was just released, that an interview with the president of Xactimate about 3 weeks ago, and he's very clear about this. And he says that insurance companies that are doing this are not using the way it's intended, and they're actually outside of the terms of use of the program. But if you think about Xactimate, they have true material cost in it, and then they have the labor rate, which has the labor burden and markup. Even if you were to take a pricing survey from Xactimate, it's only on the labor portion. It is not on the material. So there's absolutely no markup on material within Xactimate. The markup is the overhead and profit that's supposed to be applied at the end of the claim. And then there's another error inside the Xactimate system. Most contractors pay their general liability insurance and percentage on the gross sell amount. That is addressed on the labor portion. It is not addressed on the material portion. So in all actuality, there should be overhead and profit applied to the claim. Then there should be a gross general liability percentage applied to the material portion of the claim to cover that portion of the cost of the contract.
Mm-hmm. And you add that into your estimates?
Ours is just broken in. We run on a cost plus margin blanket estimate. The policy reads that they owe for fair market value. I feel with the amount of roofs that I do in Kansas City, and not just roofs, but all the other work, that I'm within fair market value, because we don't change our pricing structure, whether it's retail or insurance. We have one. I'll give you a story. Last year, I roofed a house. It was about $15,200, if I remember the contract price. No later, unfortunately, the house got hit with baseball-sized hail, and about 3 days later, and the carrier comes in with a $9,000 estimate. The homeowner just paid $15,200 for that roof. What is the fair market value for that roof? This is non-negotiable. It was just paid. It's 3 days old. So that was a fun claim to do.
You can't make this stuff up.
Right. It's absurd on how they react to some things. But if you go with the complexity argument, okay, the claim's got to be complex. Let's just throw Xactimate protocol out and say that it's got to be complex. Who gets to choose the complexity? Is it the adjuster? No. Show me the policy where he gets to choose the complexity. Is it me? No, I'm not the policy holder. If we're going to base it on complexity, it is the policy holder. I'm a contractor. I've done hundreds of thousands of these. This claim is not complex to me. If it's complex to the adjuster, again, he's probably not the right adjuster for the job. Who it is complex to is the doctor, your client, that knows nothing about construction. So he has the right as a policyholder to hire a general contractor. And if he chooses to do so, then general contractor overhead and profit should be applied to the claim, period. Not a portion. And I love it when they break the roof out or something like that, and essentially the carrier's done your job or done the appraiser's job, because they've already admitted that a general contractor is warranted. Now we're just dealing with a dispute as to the value of the claim. So it's really just ridiculousness, really.
Yeah, and the whole evolution of overhead and profit too. It used to be, when I started in 2003, there's 3 trades, you get overhead and profit. And right. Then all of a sudden that changed. Well, if there's a leak inside, then we pay overhead and profit. And then it's, well, is there coordination? Well, is it complex? Well, are there intermingling of trades? It's like every few years, all of the insurance companies kind of say the same excuse about why it's not warranted. And it's
the three trade portion in Xactimate came from a judgment, I believe, in Oklahoma, that the courts ruled that 3 trades would warrant a general contractor. And then I believe that was there was another ruling in Tennessee that contradicted that. So we had the 3 trades going for us, and then we had another ruling in Tennessee that contradicted it. But the truth of the matter is I do like the complexity portion of it. If the homeowner wants to be the general contractor, then per Xactimate protocol, general overhead and profit should be applied. If the homeowner wants to be the general contractor of it, then I can see where overhead and profit wouldn't be applied. But the other problem we have with that scenario is the policy and the premiums are calculated with overhead and profit
exactly
being in there. So they're charging the homeowner premiums for the use of a contractor, but that aren't willing to pay for the use of a general contractor when they have a loss. And I have a hard time, is what we call claims procedures, have a hard time dealing with the internal claims procedures that are not in the policy, and my client, my policyholder, didn't agree with. You can't change the rules after the fact. The rules are what's in the policy, and that is the playbook, and that's what we go by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Texas has a bulletin about that, talking about how you're collecting premiums for which a loss may never be paid if you don't pay overhead and profit. Right. It's like we show that to insurance companies and they don't care. They're just like, well, and it's just
again that everyone in the industry is searching for this magic pill, and there's no magic pill. The problem is if the carrier is going to be disingenuous in the way that they are going to scope the claim, then there is no argument, there's no documentation, there's nothing that is going to change that value of the claim outside of appraisal. And so I am a big proponent for appraisal if the carriers play by the rules, which now the carriers are starting to stop. They're starting to alter that. But there's no way to get over or get something changed if they're just going to be disingenuous in their actions. So
yeah. So what do you think about the AOBs, the assignment of benefit deal they've started up in the past few years?
I'm conflicted, actually. Do we use assignment of benefits? Yes, in rare instances. If there becomes a situation where I have indemnified the homeowner, perform the repairs, the carrier does not want to pay me, and my client does not want to stay inside the fight, then I will take an assignment of benefits. I am not a fan of assignment of benefits before the client is indemnified. And the reason why is it opens up a huge potential of fraud. And so I do believe that there is a proper and a correct scenario for it. And I don't see why I would put one of my clients through the nonsense that the carriers want to play after they are indemnified. That's what, if I can't collect my money from the carrier, then that's my responsibility. But so that's my opinion on the assignment of benefits. I don't think they're the holy grail that are being preached by some people in the industry. And I do believe that we're going to see sweeping legislation throughout the country, just like we saw in Florida here within the next few years. And what's funny is the carriers keep trying to regulate the industry to benefit them. And every time they create more regulation, all it does is increase the cost of construction. And the carriers are now reaping what they sowed in Florida is the problem. So, but I think there's a right scenario for the assignment of post-claim benefits. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When I first saw it, I was really excited, but it kind of has fizzled. It was like all the buzz there for a while, and it's kind of fizzled out a little bit. You still hear a little bit about it, but not like what it was in the beginning.
The main reason why you've seen it fizzle is, again, if you have a carrier that is not playing by the rules, you can send them a legal and binding assignment of post-claim benefits. If they don't honor it, it's not worth the piece of paper that you got written. So I tell any contractor that I talk to, if you're going to sign in an assignment of post-claim benefits, you might as well have your attorney on retainer, because you're going to end up litigating that assignment of post-claim benefits. And don't send one in unless you're willing to take the next best option, because the carriers know, they track you. You send in threats of appraisal, you send in this, you send in that, and you don't follow up. They know that all they have to do is tell you no, and they'll move on. So whatever you send in should be right, and you better be willing to back it up and prove that you will.
So you were saying a few years ago y'all were doing a lot of appraisals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like 4 or 5 years ago, all the time. And so how long did it take for you just going to appraisal every one when they're not doing the right thing? How long did it take before they
months?
So they wrote in their notes, okay, he will go to appraisal and he will win. So you better pay him.
And if they say that they're, State Farm right now has got this thing where they're saying they're making everything a coverage or a causation issue. And I'm not sure. I think Texas is a causation state. Missouri is a causation state. We even just set another precedent, very large one in Missouri, that is very clear about what is appraisable and everything. So, you got to be willing when you send in the appraisal and you get that thing saying, oh, no, this is a scope issue, so it's not appraisable. Well, of course it's a repair methodology issue. That's what's wrong with your scope. You omitted reasonable and necessary line items. Yeah, I mean, we had AAA telling us that overhead and profit and supervision was a coverage issue. Are you kidding me? The policy says we agree to insure the dwelling. You extended coverage to the dwelling. That's the entire dwelling. It is not supervision, overhead, and profit, or even building components that you extended coverage. The coverage portion of the claim has been resolved. So, yeah, it's funny how they come up with these things, but even sending in an appraisal now, you have to be willing to file with a court of jurisdiction to appoint an umpire, and even willing to litigate that, because State Farm and some others will try to flip that administrative order into litigation. So you need to be willing to go that far, or don't invoke appraisal, because the second that you don't back it up, they know, and they'll do it every time.
Well, you clearly know a lot about even the legal issues involved and different rulings and stuff like that. I'm sure there's some people listening to this to go, well, yeah, this is easy for Wally because he knows his stuff. This guy's well educated on this. What's a resource or just a helpful tool that you use to get equipped and educated on this, to have more knowledge and more confidence that you can actually go through the process and be successful?
Well, the thing I tell everybody is take a proactive approach about your career. Spend at least 30 minutes every single day reading about your trade. And I do. I don't know. I may be different in the fact, but I actually like reading court rulings. And there was a case in Minnesota that changed the way we deal with things. And they had sued State Farm, trying to recover the overhead and profit. And although the judge agreed with the plaintiff, the contractor, he awarded for the carrier because they reduced their estimate, or they reduced their invoice to get the depreciation withheld. So as soon as they reduced their invoice, they settled the claim. So just because rulings don't seem that they're favorable, they can be favorable. And I read a lot. I talk a lot with other contractors that are in the industry, and we bounce a lot of things off of each other. And we have spent a lot of money on legal fees, proving that we are right. And, but knowledge is everything. And there is a way to educate your homeowner without violating UPPA laws. So,
I think that was Miller's next question. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. You can educate your homeowner on the claims process without talking the policy. And I have got to be even more careful because I am a licensed public adjuster. So you can explain the appraisal process. You can say that I'll accept an award issued by an appraisal panel. So those are things that you can say. You can put those in your contract, but you can't talk about coverage or other things like that. I mean, that's
the P word.
Huh?
The P word policy.
Or negotiate.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. We don't negotiate our contract. I will alter the price of my contract if something's in there in error or it's in there incorrectly. But my contract price is my contract price. That's non-negotiable. It's contract. And the other thing is the payments and what's owed by the carriers when it's incurred, as soon as that contract was signed and accepted by the policyholder, the specifications for the job is ended, and that money has incurred. They have become legally liable for that money. So the homeowner or the insurance carrier owes what the contract is, as long as I am in fair market value. I'm the contractor. I'm the one that, can prove fair market value with hundreds and thousands of other contracts that are either insurance or retail related. So the adjusters, somehow within the industry, it has changed to where lines have got crossed and people are trying to do 3 different jobs in one claim. And the adjuster's job and his sole purpose is to investigate, determine, and extend coverage. The contractor's job is the one to write the specifications and determine the price of what it takes to perform the repairs, not the adjuster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have some friends that are public adjusters, and they tell me you can't even meet with an adjuster. And I'm like, why not?
The adjuster is a guest on my job site. I'm the general contractor.
Uh-huh.
He is my guest. And he is my client's guest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to have anybody on my job site without someone from my company there.
Mm-hmm.
Period. So as soon as that homeowner contracts with you, that is your job site. You are in control of that job site.
Mm-hmm. And that reminds me of another thing about, have you ever had insurance companies telling your insured, well, he's being unreasonable, I'm going to ask the homeowner to get more estimates?
Yeah, just had that yesterday with American Family.
Oh boy.
And they immediately got a demand for appraisal and said, well, if you want to get a third party involved in the price, you're missing the step, and that is appraisal. So yes, I mean, the difference with this is everybody's price is not the same. For a matter of fact, we can't even sit here and talk about what we should be charging and all that. That's price fixing. Everybody's price is going to be different. So what Miller can do a roof for is different than what I can do a roof for. Miller's overhead is not the same as my overhead. Miller's desired profit margin is not going to be the same as my desired profit margin. It's absurd to think it would be. And not only that, Miller's pricing is not going to be the same as my pricing, So every contractor is going to be different. And Xactimate did a price study, and they said that the difference between roofing estimates within a single market is 100%. So if the bottom is 10,000, the top's going to be 20,000. So there's no, that's a big discrepancy, but that whole $10,000 separation there is all within the fair market value.
Mm-hmm. But insurance companies want to say it's whatever Xactimate says. Everybody's working for the same price is what they want to tell us.
The president of Xactimate made it very clear and said Xactimate is not a global pricing. It does not fit every single scenario. It is not designed for that. And if you are using it that way, you're using the program improperly. And it can't be. Every job is different. The concern to every homeowner is different. The complexity of jobs are different. So there is not a single uniform price structure for every single job. It just can't, there's just not one. And then not only that, that's not even talking about market conditions. People say, do you raise your price during a hailstorm? Well, wouldn't it make sense? It only makes sense. Mm-hmm. As your schedule books up, the only way to lessen more jobs coming in and equaling it out so you don't book out too much is to raise your price. As your schedule drops down, the only way to book that schedule is to lower your price. It's no different than any other business in the industry. Car dealers offer rebates and do whatever when they're not selling enough cars. Those rebates, those special financing and stuff goes away when they don't have enough stock. So it's no different in the industry that if you have an unlimited amount of work coming your way, why are you putting bad work on your schedule? It's called a market condition. As market conditions are favorable to the contractors, price goes up. As market conditions are not favorable to the contractor, prices go down. It's that simple. So you can't use Xactimate as a global pricing system. It gives you a general budgetary idea of what the job should cost, but it's not 100% accurate for every job. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of instances that Xactimate may be high. But it's not a global pricing structure by any means.
Well, it's like you said, it's a tool, and the tool is limited by the one who uses it. And getting into the price issue, we interviewed Michael Stone with Markup and Profit in podcast episode number 6. And his whole thing, he's been in construction for over 50 years, and now he does coaching for contractors. And he said his number one advice for all contractors is look at the end of the year, look back on your year, look at your profit and loss statement, analyze the numbers, look at your top line revenue versus your bottom line. And he said, then plan the next year, plan your margins accordingly, because you're in this to provide for your family. You're not in this to give away free services. And I thought it was so interesting. Then we got into this long conversation about price and how you sell on value versus price and stuff like that. But it encouraged me, even because today I got a call from a guy, insurance agent, that sent me a lead. And he said, hey, here's a guy that filed a claim, and I want him to have you go check his roof out. So I talked to this guy, and the guy says, hey, I'm happy to talk to you. You know, this insurance agent said you'd be great to work with. I've already had one contractor come out and look at the roof, but I just want to make sure I'm getting, all the information I can. In other words, get bids. I said, hey, that's great. Really appreciate that, insurance agent. I said, but I'll tell you, we've been in business over 25 years. We've done thousands of jobs. We're going to give you world-class customer service. Here's a story of a job we just did where we knocked it out of the park for the customer. The customer's happy. We're happy. I said, but I don't want to get in a bidding war with another general contractor. I said, then it just turns into a race to the bottom, and you can go and find some other contractor in town that's going to do it cheaper. And I said, we're not here to be the cheapest. We're here to be one of the best. And he said, okay, well, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not looking for you to, take it to the last $10 or anything like that. And I said, okay, good. I just want to set expectations. We're not going into this to be the cheapest game in town. And tomorrow I'm expecting to get a signed contract and do the job, for our margins, for our price, doing it the right way.
Right. And there's acceptable instances and contractors. A contractor that just opened up and is trying to make a name, he can be at that $10,000 price. Say, I'm with you. We've been in business 28 years. I don't need to be there. We're up here. I mean, there's a difference, and we provide a service for what we're doing. So, there is a huge value to peace of mind. And when you're able to provide that peace of mind to your clients will pay more for that. I will pay more for a better service than I will anytime. I mean, I don't drive a Yugo. So it's one of those things where people will pay for the service. People will pay for the knowledge. A lot of people and a lot of the trading seminars and everything, they'll talk about what does it take to make a sell, and they'll say a solution. That is the only answer, really, is you got to provide the solution, and that's through knowledge. When you provide the correct knowledge and answer the correct questions and provide the correct solution, that client's not going with anybody else. And the other thing, if that was an insurance restoration job, the first thing I would have told them is why are you shopping price? Everybody's price is the same. There's no difference between the bottom barrel price and the top price. They're all the same. It is your deductible, period. So, we can talk about the correct specifications and we can do the work correctly, or the only way to lessen that claim is to pull out line items out of that scope and not do the job properly. So do you want the job done properly? Then I'm your guy. If not, there's a million other contractors out there that'll do it incorrectly, I guess. But, price is irrelevant. Everybody's price is the same.
Mm-hmm. And depreciation is your friend, as you told me in 2005.
The depreciation is your friend. Yes, sir. I forgot I told you that, but yes,
I remembered it all these years, man. That's been a good one.
But when you're dealing with consumers, we try to educate the consumer about the construction process. We also educate them, somewhere in the industry, it went from you're a contractor to where we'll take care of everything. We'll take care of the insurance. We'll deal with this. We'll negotiate with the carrier. We'll do all this. That is incorrect. We let the homeowner know that this is their claim. This is their policy. This is their home. We can show you the construction process and what it takes to repair your home correctly. But when your insurance carrier calls me, I'm going to conference you in. if every email that is sent, we carbon the homeowner on that email so they know what's going on. And we actually, let me reverse that, we carbon the insurance company on the email. We're sending it to our client. There was one thing on the level of the playing field where they were talking about, what do you do when they ask for sub invoices? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. In my contract, it doesn't say I have to disclose sub invoices to my consumer. The policyholder, nowhere in the policy does it say they have to produce sub invoices. I invoice my homeowner. My homeowner provides that documentation to the carrier. It amazes me that very intelligent people will take directive from a third party that has absolutely no authority over them. It's, again, just amazing. So, stay in track. Deal with your client, teach your client that you may need help. You may need to get on a phone call. We may need to do that. And if not, we always have the option to go to appraisal.
Mm-hmm. So what do you tell the insurance companies when they want your sub bids?
I don't get asked that question.
No.
I would start laughing. That is the most, because again, I don't invoice the carrier. We invoice the homeowner and we carbon copy the carrier on it. So my reply would be, call your policyholder. Why are you calling me? I mean, that is a ridiculous question. We don't entertain ridiculous questions.
Well, let me ask another strange question that's strange to me. I'm coming from the outside in, right? I've been in business development for years, online marketing and stuff like that. So I come into the roofing industry and start working with Miller. And one of the things I noticed is that we'll go look at a roof and it doesn't look like there's much damage on it. Insurance company pays for it. We go look at another roof. It's just all beat up. Insurance company goes, oh, there's not enough damage. So how many roofs are getting paid for that shouldn't, and how many roofs are not getting paid for that should?
Let me answer the first one. How many roofs are getting paid for that shouldn't? A strong majority that have, and you're talking, when I say that, and you're talking to a person that does not believe that most composition roof assemblies are repairable. So there are a lot of roofs that have absolutely zero damage or virtually no damage that are being paid for. I would say 50% of the roofs that we roof based on insurance funds are not damaged. And we were brought in after the fact. I mean, I am very adamant that we don't file or recommend to file frivolous claims. So, but that's not the norm in our industry. Our industry is let's throw darts on a wall and then we're going to get bad adjusters. And, we're going to pick up 25 to 50% through bad adjusting. That's ridiculous. And that's something the carriers need to address. I had a conversation with State Farm, one of the higher ups of State Farm, and I made it very clear. And they looked at me like I was crazy. Why don't you just stop paying for roofs that you don't owe for and then pay the correct amount of money for the ones you do? And I guarantee you they would end up ahead. But again, that comes to the old the saying I was saying about staying in our lane. We're not the adjuster. We don't extend coverage. So if you're going to extend coverage, then we're going to roof it. But I would advise to the carriers to relook at how they adjust their claims and look at their protocols, because a lot of roofs that are not damaged are being bought. And that's been the way for forever. I would say the majority of Pensacola was purchased because of FEMA. But,
the blue roofs, yeah.
The blue roofs. You pull them off, there wouldn't even be a shingle missing. But, there's that. But that's the carrier, again, doing what they do. And, how do you stop it? How many roofs do I think in the industry anymore are being denied or not paid for that should be paid for? I would say that number is very small, for the fact that the contractors in the industry has gotten more educated. Do I think they've been denied or there was a fight to it? Yes, but I do believe that there's a lot of very savvy contractors out there that know what the next best option is, and will take that fight to the carrier and eventually get that roof purchased for the homeowner.
So interesting. Yeah, just as an outsider coming in, that's been one of the things that's boggled my mind the most. And I just call foul because it was the same when I was in the healthcare world. You've got healthcare insurance companies making policies for patients on what kind of drugs they should and shouldn't be able to receive, and how they have to try this drug first. And if it doesn't work, then you can step it up to that drug and all this stuff. And it's like, wait a second, these guys aren't doctors. Why are they making policies? And it's the same thing in the world of construction and contracting. It's like, wait a second, why are they making the decision on this? But well, let's switch gears and get into what's changed with, at the time of the recording of this podcast with the COVID epidemic and stuff like that. What have you guys done to generate leads? I mean, every general contractor needs leads, storm contractors needs leads. We all got to keep the new business coming in. Yes, of course, we have our customers and stuff like that. But what do you guys do as far as online marketing or lead generation to keep the sales machine going?
Well, we did respect the quarantine. When they issued the quarantine, we did close down. So I might have been one of the few contractors that did. When I said that, if we were invited on the property, or we had contracts with clients and they were okay with us fulfilling those, that's fine. But we do canvas and we do other marketing, and we did not do any of that during the quarantine. We don't do a whole lot of online marketing. We don't do a whole lot of advertising. Most of our business is from previous clients, referrals, and quite honestly, just doing the job right. You do the job right, you look better than everybody else, the neighbors do hire you. So that's our scheme. We used to advertise quite a bit, and we have found that when we don't need the leads, that's when they were coming in, and when you need the leads, they're not coming in. So our advertisement budget is very small. Most of that goes to charities and things like that, sponsoring teams or what have you. But we don't have a very large online presence. I say that I think our Facebook page has 8,000 likes and what have you, but we don't really push a lot in that aspect.
Yeah, well, that's a lot. 8,000 likes is a lot. Well, I had a feeling you'd say something like that. I told Miller, I said, I bet he doesn't do a lot of online marketing because you probably get a lot of referral business. I mean, it's clear that you want to do a stellar job for your clients. And so just our passion with this platform is to equip people through these podcasts in the areas of leadership, sales, and marketing. And the more effective you are at the leadership and the sales side, the less you have to spend on marketing.
That's correct.
And it's interesting too in Dallas, because being such a big market, if a big storm comes through, everybody starts spending money on online marketing and ads, Google ads and stuff like that. So it becomes way more competitive. The cost per click is a lot more and like that. But then when there's no storm, like you said, that's when it's easier to get the leads and stuff. So it really takes a strategic approach. But Miller, do you have any other questions you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I was wondering about code stuff, like code enforcement or code requirements where there is no code, and also how that relates to code versus manufacturer specifications for installation procedures.
This is one of my favorite subjects when it comes to carriers here. The carriers have created this urban myth that unless the code is enforced, then it's not viable. And the reason why this is increased cost of construction, or ordinance and law, however it's worded in the policy, will say, we'll pay for the increased cost of construction due to any code that is enforced at the time of loss. So they focus on the word enforced. The problem is, if the code is adopted, the mandate in the Chapter 1, I think it's 104.2, directs the code official to enforce the code to the intent of the code. So, and it doesn't matter if it's a repair, renovation, what have you. And then I think 105.2 in the code book is work exempt from permits. The first thing it says, any work exempt from permits does not allow the person to perform the work outside of the intent of the code. And then 113.1 of the code, unlawful acts, says that anybody that performs a repair, renovation, or what have you outside of the intent of the code has committed an unlawful act. And it also says, or make so happen. So I've always been curious, if the adjuster doesn't write a scope correctly or to code, did he make it so happen for work to be performed and commit an unlawful act? But anyway, so if there's an adopted code, then it is enforced. But then we have the problem that and I'm pretty sure every state has the same laws, that any construction contract entered into, whether expressly implied or written into the contract, it is in the contract that all work has got to be done to a workmanlike manner. And that's industry standard by a skilled a workman of average skill. So when you say industry standard, we'd have to fall back to what is industry standard. Well, industry standard would be at least the code. The code is the ICC code would be the industry standard. That's the bare minimum of construction standard. And quite honestly, if you roof or build to the code, you're a pretty crappy roofer and a pretty crappy builder, because that's the bare minimum. And the carriers are actually asking us to go below the bare minimum. But then if you were to go to industry standard, that would be manufacturer specifications, which is going to be higher than the code. The specs on that are going to be higher than the code. You cannot do any work on a property and do it in a workmanlike manner and install it outside of manufacturer specifications. Where they're confusing things is they're trying to imply that there's no coverage because of an ordinance and law issue. That is absolutely incorrect. That is not what ordinance and law is for. Ordinance and law is for something that is undamaged or something that is missing. So let's talk about ice and water shield. You have ice and water shield. They don't have ordinance and law in the policy, but they're saying we don't know for it because they don't have ordinance and law. It's absolutely incorrect. That's under the dwelling coverage. That is manufacturer specification in the northern market to apply ice and water shield at the eaves. One would have to assume that when that roof was done, it was done to manufacturer specifications, the previous roof. So like kind of quality would be the manufacturer specifications today. It has an underlayment on it, correct? So ordinance and law would not be the correct coverage to apply that to. We're just dealing with a different underlayment. The manufacturer specifications have changed. They have increased. So we're putting on an underlayment. There was an underlayment there. It's just a different kind of underlayment. So whether they enforce code and all this stuff, that's absolutely ridiculous. If they have code, it is enforced. It is a law. It's part of the law. Just because you got caught or you do it outside of code and whatever, and you didn't get caught, that doesn't mean that it's not enforced. It just makes you a good criminal. So we don't play that game either. Again, if a carrier or an adjuster calls us and asks us to send them code documentation or what have you, and so on, we simply have our homeowner request an adjuster that knows what they're doing and knows the requirements of the municipality of where their home is at. I don't think that's unreasonable for a policyholder to have an adjuster that knows the requirements of the municipality of where the property is at. So we don't get into those issues. And I'll go as far as to say we write our contracts to the work we are doing, to the manufacturer specifications. I really don't care if there's 7 vents. If our software says we don't use vents, we use ridge vent, but our software calculates the ventilation. It automatically puts it in the contract. I don't care if there's 6 vents or whatever. If it's requiring 18 vents are going on there. If it's requiring 120 foot of intake vent, it's going on there. Every single one of our roofs has intake vent and exhaust vent paid for the carrier, whether they have ordinance and law or not, because it's manufacturer specification. I don't know what the manufacturer specification was at the time that roof was roofed last time, but that's there. And then the carriers will argue, well, that's betterment. Are you kidding me? The inception of the RCV provision in the policy was a betterment policy. It is a betterment. You are trading old for new. That is a betterment. So when they say they don't know for betterment, that's exactly what an RCV policy is a betterment policy. So I love the code thing. It's laughable to me.
So you told me the other day synthetic felt is required by the manufacturers. But
well, I'll ask you, our 904.2 compatibility material, and it states something to the extent that all materials have got to be compatible with each other. I will ask you to call JF, Certainty, or Owens Corning, any of the majors, and say, hey, I am going to use a Tamco saturated 15-pound asphalt felt, which 15-pound asphalt seems to be the default. That's on every single claim. Call JF and ask them, is 15-pound Tamco felt compatible with a timberline shingle? They're going to tell you no. You know why? Because they don't test for it. So they can't tell you it's compatible. So then I asked the carrier, well, you have a CertainTeed on there, you have Owens Corning, you have a GAF. I can't put a 15-pound asphalt on it because they don't make it. They only make fiberglass felt or synthetic on up. And actually their fiberglass asphalt felt is more expensive than their synthetics. So it's actually it's less expensive to go with a synthetic than it is a saturated asphalt felt. Every single one of our contracts lists CertainTeed Roof Runner or CertainTeed Diamond Deck, depending on the application. We don't even entertain the felt argument because we can't put it on. CertainTeed does not make a saturated asphalt felt.
Wow. And then one other question. I've got a job coming up. It's got spaced sheathing or 1x8 shiplap or something on there. What do I need to do to get that redecked?
Again, that's another confusion on coverage issues. A lot of carriers like to say that is a ordinance and law issue if they don't have ordinance and law, and try to push that cost into the ordinance and law issue. It's not part of ordinance and law. It's part of the dwelling coverage. It's part of the structure. The definition of a roof assembly is from the decking on up. The structural portion is from the rafters down. So the code has went as far as from 2012 to 2015. I think the revision was made to in definitions, but I think it's called roof replacement. And it says roof replacement is replacing the roof assembly along with any damaged or deteriorated substrate. So now under definition, it's defined in the code book, but it's always been defined under the roof assembly definition as the deck and all other materials going on up. So when they extended coverage to the roof assembly or the dwelling as a whole, they've already extended coverage to the deck. So if you have a 1/4 of an inch gap, and I always tell people carry your framer pencil because that's actually a measuring tool. The skinny side is a 1/4 of an inch, the long side is a 1/2 inch. So if you can stick a framing pencil in the gap, that's got to be redecked. It's not negotiable. That is the definition of space decking. Anything over a 1/4 of an inch. And some manufacturers have different guidelines on that. CertainTeed does not allow any solid board decking to be over 6 inches wide. So if it's over 6 inches wide, you technically have to cut that board without cutting the rafters. And I think Owens Corning and GAF have some kind of wording on the width of the decking also on solid board decking. So yes, they owe for the decking. It is there. It is manufacturer specification. It is not an ordinance and law or an increased cost of construction issue. It is part of the roof assembly. The roof assembly is a singular unit. It is not a bunch of building components. It is a singular unit once it's installed, and that does include the decking. And we don't argue that often with this. This is pretty much a given for us. And we are very successful for it. For a matter of fact, it was pretty funny. If you get on my Facebook page, I got a voicemail from a State Farm adjuster a couple of years back. And actually, it was so humorous, I had to post it. And it was dealing about the decking situation. So,
oh man.
But no, the problem with the decking is they're trained to think that it's a separate component from the roof assembly. It is not by definition. And then if you went to the manufacturer specification, everybody knows that we have to have a solidly sheet deck that can hold an L. But the coverage is under the dwelling, so they owe for it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try that. I'll let you know how it goes.
Okay. I'll help you out if you have problems.
Okay. All right.
I'll have to renew my Texas PA license, but we can come down there and help you out on that one real quick.
All right. That sounds good, man. All right, Dylan, you got anything else?
And I think that's it. Wally, thank you so much for joining the show. I knew this was just going to be getting lots of gold, lots of great insight from this interview. Do you have any parting piece of advice for any contractors listening to this saying, okay, I feel like I just got a kick in the seat of the pants. I want to take it to the next level. What's a parting piece of advice?
I would strongly recommend to people to abandon Xactimate, especially when we're dealing with simple residential hail claims. And I would go to a lump sum contract. I would break out the payment terms, an ACV and RCV, or whatever your payment terms wants to be. Put the supplement in as a supplemental payment due upon when released by the carrier. I would stop taking directives from a third party that has no authority over me. You don't work for the carrier, you work for the homeowner. So when they call you and ask for a photo of this or a photo of that, charge them. I mean, it's not there, but I would stop playing their game, because the more you play the game, the more you have to play the game. When you set the precedent saying this is my price is based on material, it's based on labor with my margin, and here it is, and it was agreed to by the policyholder, and go from there. I just feel that as contractors as a whole, we waste a lot of time playing this nonsense, and it gets frustrating. And not only does it get frustrating for the contractor, it gets frustrating for the policyholder. I have found that my policyholders like our process, that as soon as there's a dispute, there's no going back and forth. Hey, let's go to appraisal. If the carrier's right, they're going to win an appraisal, correct? So why would they not welcome appraisal?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so take the stress out of your life would be my recommendations.
That's awesome, man. Well, Wally Stine with Modern Concepts, thanks again for joining the show, man. We sure appreciate it.
Guys,
thanks. Yeah, thanks, Wally. It was great talking to you. Great to see your face again. It's been a few years.
Good to see you again, Miller.
All right, man.
All right, thanks.
Okay, we'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Awesome. That's a wrap. Was there anything you guys wanted to share before we jump off the call? We want to be mindful of your schedule, Wally.
Oh no, I'm fine. No, that's kind of enjoyable. So I had a good time with it.
All right.
We need to get you back on in a few months, man, and we can talk about if there's a hot button issue you want to discuss or whatever. But I mean, I gleaned a ton of insight from this.
Anytime you want, guys. And the thing that you'll find with me is, I wish I probably made this point on the camera, is you've always got to be changing. The carriers are always morphing. Everything's changing. The industry's changing. When I first met Miller, I told him, hey, you're crazy for not using Xactimate. It's a third-party pricing system. We don't have to argue whether drip edge is, $1.25 or $1.45. It's a third-party pricing system. Some of it's not going to be right, but, on an average, it should average out. Well, now that they're not playing right, you always gotta morph with it and things like that. But I'm more than welcome to get on anytime y'all want. I had fun, and I'd love to get Paul on. Paul, good friend of mine, used to work for me, runs a very, very large and successful roofing company. He's probably one of the largest now in Kansas City. And he has a different perspective on a lot of things that I have. And his stuff he's very analytic. He knows the numbers and things like that. He would have been fun to have on too. But anytime.
What company does he have?
Emerson Enterprises.
Oh, okay.
Out of, Olathe, Kansas.
Oh, okay.
Now, Wally, do you do commercial roofs too?
We do.
And do you do the same thing, that you give a bid, and if they push back, you take it to appraisal?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Our largest dispute was a commercial property, and it went from $700,000 to $47 million.
What?
Good night.
Lump sum contract.
Oh my goodness.
Took 18 months, but it got there. At least,
yeah.
And with that one, how we did that one is we said, let's start dealing with just the roofs, and we'll deal with trades as the construction process goes. So it was pretty good. I mean, the commercial side, there's no difference than either way. The problem with getting lump sum bids in a commercial project is you're dealing with so many different variables. It's easier to write it in Xactimate. But if I'm just dealing with the roof and some cap metal and some HVAC units, they're getting a lump sum price.
So how, you said you recommend like getting away from Xactimate. How do you come up with your prices? And do you pull them out of Xactimate for the most part?
No, we use labor yields. We have a software that we use that we just plug it in. It calculates the labor yields, and it calculates the material. That's another thing. And I know I'm counting pennies now, but when you order a 25 square roof and you order 3 rolls of synthetic, where did the other 5 squares go? It goes in the trash. Technically, you cannot move that to another job because everything's got to be new, wrapped, and marked. So you can't move the product from one job to the next. I love it on residential jobs where you have 50 square foot of flat roof. Well, I got to order 2 rolls or 2 square of base modified and 1 square cap to do that. So ours actually takes all the material, charges for the material cost, and then calculates the labor rate based on the actual square footage that's there, and calculates the hours. So they get the labor, they get the material, and then they get labor, and it'll tell them how many man hours it takes, and then it applies our margin, which is 100%.
Okay.
I won't disclose that, but that's our margin. So
Okay.
Our margin's 50%, which most people don't use
Yeah.
margins in our industry. They use markup, but a 50% margin would be 100% markup. So that's our margin. Our labor rate, we don't apply a margin to our labor rate. Our labor rate doesn't matter what the trade is. I charge $82.50 an hour for labor, and that's doesn't matter what we do. All my tradesmen are skilled, and we've pretty much moved in-house on most of what we do. We do still sub a little bit of roofing, but I don't, like you get an Xactimate and they have this trade that is $20. This trade is this or what have you. We charge one flat labor rate across the board, and kind of like screens, you can't go out and do one screen for $42. We have a staging charge, and we disclose all this. We have a staging charge, we have a material charge, and then we have a labor minimum charge if it doesn't get to that. So if we do one screen, it's about $400 and something. It takes about 30 screens for us to get to Xactimate pricing, if that makes sense, in the volume aspect of it. And with that said, I could show you on some line items where we're actually less than Xactimate. I'm okay with that. My margin is there. I'm not trying to maximize the claim. That's one of the terms I hate more than anything in the industry. I'm just trying to get paid the margin that I have to make, and that covers our work comp, our general liability, and our overhead and everything like that. So there are items that we are less. There are items that we are higher, like the roofing rate in Kansas City is $96.50 an hour, while I charge $82.50 an hour. So I'm actually less labor-wise than I am Xactimate. Where we're higher than them is we actually apply a margin to the material, which they don't, which Xactimate doesn't. So unless you get the overhead and profit on the claim, then that's what gets us to our number. But you take our metrics and our yield rates, which have been developed over the years, they're very accurate. So, and they're accurate to my employees, not some hypothetical thing they did. So that's how we come up with our pricing.
So are your sales guys on a percentage?
Our sales guys are on a percent of profit, yes.
So what are you paying? You can mind me asking?
My average sales guy makes about 25% of the gross.
Okay. So that's about a 50-50 or something like that.
We actually charge 12.5% overhead and do a percentage split depending on what level we're at with our company. But if we were to go by just the gross contract, most of my reps make between 20 and 25% of the gross contract.
Okay. That's good. That's a good living.
Right. My reps make a lot of money, and that's why I have reps that have been with me for 15 years or more. I think my longest term rep is 18 years. There's not a lot of companies I can say I've had a sales rep for 18 years or 15 years or 12 years in this industry. So
who was that? Who was the old guy in Pensacola? Was it Andy? Was that his name?
Parker. Yes, sir.
Is he still around?
He is still kicking, believe it or not.
Oh my goodness.
Andy was the best.
Yeah, he's a character, man.
I've never heard anybody deal with an insurance company like Andy would.
Oh, yeah?
Take the phone up on him saying, why are you calling me? I'm going to get my money from the homeowner. I could care less if you pay him. Click. He was funny as heck. And, but yeah, he's still going around. His son graduated and opened up a business. So he kind of left the industry and went to help Neil and doing good, playing a lot of golf right now. But he's still as ever.
Yeah. I'll tell you one line I remember, in Pensacola when they took away all our licenses and I was down there at your office kind of talking to everybody and he was in there and I'm like, dude, what do you think we're going to do, Andy? And he's like, I don't know. My wife just found out my girlfriend's pregnant.
That sounds exactly like something Andy would say too.
I was like, what did this old man just tell me?
That was old Parker. He was a different breed all the way around. He taught me a lot. He believe it or not, Andy used to shingle up until about shingle the roofs up until about 2 years before Pensacola.
Wow. He's a tough old man.
Yeah. And he was good. Probably one of the best roofers ever. I mean, he was very
Wow.
meticulous. But yeah, he's fun.
So how many sales guys do you have?
We run seven guys, not counting me and my wife. My wife estimates quite a bit too, and I estimate when I have time.
Oh, okay. Wow.
9. Yeah, so 9. Well, 8.5 if you count me. So somewhere.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. So whenever I first met you, that was my second year in the roofing business, and now I'm 17 years in. And it was just me selling back then, doing what I could do. But man, going to Florida was the best thing for me. I learned so much, grew so much from going.
Right.
I was just killing it in Pensacola. I was going and getting the claims turned around that didn't have the blue roofs on them. That was the only people that would talk to me. And then went to South Florida that next year, and I got those Yankees didn't like me down there.
We did not go down there. The thing that made Pensacola special was no one had shingles, and we did. So that gave us a distinct advantage over everybody else. And we were literally moving between 1,800 and 2,000 squares a day, 6 days a week down there.
Wow.
And yeah, we were doing well. We were moving. We got 10 semis a load 6 days a week. So. And we were out of shingles every day by 5 o'clock. So it was a good storm, but and then we went down to Hurricane Ike. We did really well down there, and I think that was my last go around.
Yeah.
Well, you spent some time in Texas, didn't you?
I grew up in Texas. I'm from Harlingen, born in Corpus.
Oh, okay. I grew up in League City.
Where?
League City. It's like 20 minutes north of Galveston.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I've been through Harlingen. I bought some beef jerky out there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up on the Harlingen Country Club. That's where I got my golf fetish from. So, family down there and all that stuff. Moved up here my senior year. So,
wow.
Ever since.
Hey, are you a part of you get your shingles from a supply house, or are you doing a buying group or anything like that?
No, we buy through the suppliers. We used to have down in Florida, we had our own supply company and everything like that. And I found out I'm not a very good supplier. So, any kind of discounts or rebates or anything. And back then it was different. The market has changed, the shingles changed, everything's changed, how they operate and sell them now. But it's just not worth it for the margins. It's not worth it. You have to be specialized in that to deal with it. Now, if there's ever a situation again where I couldn't get shingles, then I would reconsider it. But I don't know that. I don't know the industry will ever run into that again. So, but yeah, I would never do it again.
So, are you doing mainly CertainTeed for shingles up there? Okay. Yeah, we just finished a CertainTeed yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been with them for a while, and they take care of me, so there's no need to change. And I like their warranties better than the others, and so on. So
yeah, we got killed on a Tamco warranty earlier this year, like 40 squares, and I think we made like $800. Like, yeah, we don't pay for the underlayment or the starter or the ridge or the valley material or the nails. All we're giving you is the shingles.
That's my point. So I don't really follow a lot of manufacturer claims. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah.
You could,
well, yeah, we had to. I mean, we were slow, and it was a good customer, so we did it anyway. But make me think twice now.
Right.
Like, my goodness.
But so, all right.
Okay.
Dylan, it's a pleasure meeting you. So what do you do? What do you do in the roofing business now?
Well, I started working for Miller in sales, and just from my background, I said, "Hey, man, there's a huge opportunity here to launch a podcast and interview people like you, but also with my online marketing background, there's a lot of snake oil in that business too. to actually bring in some tactics that work for guys that just don't have the time to mess with it.
Right.
You know, they need help. They need a website that looks decent. They need a listing on Google. They need some stuff. They need somebody to come alongside them. And so that's the idea that I shared with him and another friend of mine. And so that's why we launched Roofing Mastery.
Right. I think it's a good idea.
But on the sales side, you know, I'm obviously I want to learn the residential sales side, but I can't stop being so curious about how to get more commercial. And so I want to try to develop a plan and an approach to get more commercial jobs. Because right now we're pretty heavily dependent on storm damage.
The only way you're going to get into the commercial market and get into the commercial market strongly outside of storm damage is through a maintenance department. And you've got to set up the maintenance contracts. There are companies, don't get me wrong, that do run successful, profitable maintenance departments. Most maintenance departments are a pass-through, and so you maintain the roof for 5 years to get the roof when it ultimately fails or what have you. Other than that, yeah, I don't know how you get into it without having maintenance contracts on the roofs. We don't do a lot of commercial. We do some, but we don't. That's not. I would not say. There's probably other people you can talk to that are more knowledgeable on that than
Sure.
me. Larry Walty out of Wichita is what I consider one of the best commercial roofers in the country. Not the biggest, but when it comes down to quality and knowledge, he's about as good as you get. So, but yeah, that's really not my specialty there. But I do know that it all begins with the maintenance department. Anybody that's successful that I know of that's moved over from steep slope to low slope has implemented a maintenance program and went after that. So
Interesting. Yeah, we interviewed a guy named Dave Sullivan, and he's retired, sold his company, did real well, positioned it for a good exit, and sold it. And now he does a podcast too. But that was his thing. He's like, get a maintenance program, get a maintenance department, and have that steady revenue coming in. And then, like you said, you know, you can do the re-roofing as well. But anyway, well, man, looking forward to talking again in the future. We sure appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a good day.
All right. We'll see you, Wally.